In this video, I'm going to show you how to put together my violin card. First, you're going to upload the SVG. When you purchase this SVG, you're going to get two options. One is a full 5x7 card. The other is just the front of the card. And that is available to you if you want to use a pre-made 5x7 card. When you see the preview come up, you just click continue. Here's where you can rename the image if you'd like to, or add any tags that might help you find this SVG later. First thing I'm going to do is ungroup this because there are different pieces that I want to have work together. I do have two violin-shaped pieces in here because you might want to add kind of an offset border. You don't necessarily need to do that. With these two pieces, if we look over here on the layers panel, we can see there's a little arrow. So let's click on that arrow. There are two pieces or two layers within this grouping. I'm going to click on this top one here, and I'm going to change that from cut to be drawn with the pen. The reason I'm doing this is because once you cut this, it's going to be really hard to know exactly where to put those different black pieces. So by drawing the outline, I can exactly place things. Now I'll select both of these and click attach because attach will hold the placement and position of those drawn lines on my violin shape. I have a similar thing going on with the bridge piece. So let's click on the little arrow to expand those layers. So these little lines, my intention is for those to be drawn on the base cut so that they're guides. So let's select on those and change them to pen. Select both of them and attach. Now, when I click make, first it's going to want to cut my black pieces, then my large, I'm using burgundy for this example. But here you can see this is the piece that's going to be the wood grain. So it's going to first draw with a pen where those black pieces are going to go and then cut the shape. This is that kind of offset piece, which is optional. In my final card, I didn't end up doing it, but it's in there if you want it. And then these will be all the little bridge pieces. You can see there's spaces in between these because these are the cut ones. This is the one that has the drawn lines on it. After I click continue, I'm going to show you some of these pieces being cut because I really want you to see how it draws these elements on the different pieces of the design and how that's going to help you when you're putting it all together. I'm really excited to show you this little trick. Before I cut this piece for the main violin shape, I want to mark it because it's going to be really hard to know exactly where to put those black pieces that represent the parts of the violin. So I grab my little adapter and I'm putting my pen right into there. And now I'm going to open up the little door on the holder on the Cricut. We'll take out the blade holder and put the pen in. So this is why when we were setting things up, we had the lines drawn on the shape that we changed from cut to draw and then attach them onto the shape. Because now what's going to happen is first, the Cricut is going to draw those lines. This is going to help you so much when it comes to gluing on the later on pieces. Just trust me. Right now, you might still be going, why am I doing this? When we get further on in the video, you're going to just say, Shawn, you're a genius, and I will believe and follow everything you say forevermore. Trust me, I made this card once without doing this. It was a lot harder. All right, so now that it's done drawing, we just take the pen out and we're going to put in our deep blade and the deep blade housing, which is the black housing. I always just keep a deep cut blade in the black housing. Then you don't have to try to remember which one is deep and which one is regular. It's just always in there. So now you can see it's cutting the shape of the violin. I am cutting this on a paper-backed wood veneer type product. It's sold by 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop. And because I always like to save you money, I want to remind you to use coupon code ShawnM10 when you check out at 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop. You will save 10% every single time you shop. Besides saving you money, tips and tricks are kind of my thing. So here's another tip for you. Once the machine is done cutting, do not unload the cutting mat, especially when you're using a new material for the first time. You want to go and just lift up a portion of the material to see if it cut all the way through. If it did not cut all the way through, you can hit the cut button, which is the middle button on your Cricut, a second time, and it will cut exactly over the first cut again. But remember, that trick of cutting it again over the top only works if you have not unloaded the mat from the cutting machine. Now you can see why we did the drawing of the elements. You can see exactly where we're going to have to place things. It's like a little puzzle, and this is just going to help us put that puzzle together a little easier. Now it's time to cut the gold pieces that are going to be the bridge of the violin. And I'm going to use that same tip that I taught you about drawing on these lines before it's cut. And this is going to help me a ton when I go to build this little bridge piece because it's so tiny and it was just hard to figure out where to put things. I really enjoy sharing my tips and tricks because crafting is supposed to be fun. So if I can give you a tip or trick that's going to take away the frustration and make things a little bit more enjoyable for you, that's what I want to do. So if you need a crafting buddy who has her brain full of tips and tricks, you need to be following me. When you take your cardstock off of your cutting mat, have you ever noticed that sometimes it kind of curls up on the edges and makes some of the cardstock unusable? Well, guess what? I got a trick for that too. When you unload the mat, flip the mat upside down and then get the material started coming off, but roll the mat away from the material. This really helps so that there's no curling on the leftover piece that you pulled off of the mat. I am going to leave these little pieces for the bridge right on my cutting mat and grab my Zig two-way glue pen. This is going to allow me to put my glue exactly where I want it and then pick up the little pieces off to the left and set them right on top of my main piece over here on the right and build up these layers. And I'm doing these layers so that when I put this entire bridge piece on the card, there's really little slots in the bridge. And you're going to see that when I show you this from the side view. Basically, glue, put the piece in place, and keep stacking. Let the glue really sit and dry, add the next piece. But once it's all built, you see how this is like a raised up little piece? So now I can take those pieces I stacked on top of each other and glue them onto the main base piece. This process took a while and I trimmed out all of that video, but really take your time, glue one piece down and really just walk away, do something else, let that glue harden so that this will come off in one large piece. I did have to use my little spatula to kind of pop it off, but then once I do that, you can see that there are multiple layers kind of stacked up to make a thickness. And then just stick it on the glue and let it dry. It's going to take a while to really harden up, but in the end, it's really going to be worth it for the look we're going to get and the little raised up section and ridges that are going to come out of the bridge. And here is another close-up shot so you can see how that looks and how it's raised up off of that main piece. Now we're going to go to the actual violin piece. And this is where those drawn lines are going to come in handy. I'm going to start with the little bridge and you can see the spot where that's supposed to go. And I can place it right on top. I can just add my glue inside that section and then place my piece. So I don't have to worry about, am I centering things correctly and aligning different pieces? Next, I can use the same process to add the black pieces to the violin shape. If you've not tried having the Cricut draw sections with the pen, I highly recommend it. It really makes putting things together so much easier. You could even use a pen color that's close to the base of your design so that you don't see it as much. With this piece, because it fits right in the corner, I didn't draw the outline. That's literally going to set right there in the corner. But before I even glue that in place, let's add the strings. I just grabbed some embroidery floss and then I am going to separate the floss because there's multiple strings within your strands of embroidery floss. And I just need really thin pieces to bead the strings. So this was kind of the hardest part of dealing with the embroidery floss, was trying to get it to come apart, but just kind of wiggle it around in your fingers until you see those separate strands and then pull those apart. Once you have them all separated, you can start threading them into the holes. Again, this is harder to do on video because I'm trying to keep everything centered so you can see it. But once I feed it through the hole, I am going to just tape it with some Scotch tape on the back. So just flip it over and tape it real quick. Or you can feed it through and kind of hold it with one of your fingers on the back side until you get all 4 of them feeding through, and then tape them all at once, whichever works best for you. When I'm securing the strings at the black piece, I'm not really worried about how tight they are because I'm just securing them going through the holes. We'll worry about the tension once we're stringing them across the entire violin. So now that those are in place, I can add my glue to the back of the black piece and put that in place. And it's just going to line up in the corner. Again, that's why I didn't draw this piece for placement, because it's literally going to just line up in the corner. And that's easy enough to do without guidelines. Now that we allowed that to dry, we can work on the tension and feeding these through those little slits in the bridge. If yours seem to be slipping around, do them one at a time. It doesn't matter. I was trying to get them to all go at once, and I think one popped out when I flipped the card, and then I had to redo it, so don't worry about it. But you can see here where I'm guiding them through those little slits. Honestly, this is all a lot easier to do when you're not trying to also focus on, am I getting the video shot framed correctly? So just give yourself some time and patience. And then you're going to notice when I flip this over, I do start taping things one at a time because I can really focus in on each string and pull it taut. And then just make sure you tape it down on the back side. And nobody's going to see that tape. So you don't have to worry about if it's looks pretty or centered right. Just secure it. That's all you're worrying about. You can use this card as a violin or a viola or a fiddle. Because of how I cropped the design, it kind of works for any of those instruments. After I secure everything on the back, I can either leave the strings hanging or I can trim off the excess off the back. And then you might have to go look at the front one more time and kind of adjust the spacing just by sliding the strings around with your finger. It's all about tweaking it and getting it just right. Once you do that, you're ready to just add your patterned paper to your 5x7 card. I'm using a pre-made card. Then I put adhesive on the back of my violin and line up the corners. I hope you enjoyed making this card with me today, and I would love to see your variations of this design. So feel free to send me a photo or tag me if you share it on social media. Let me know if you have any questions or drop me a comment to let me know what you want to learn how to create next. Before you go, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. I love to hear from you.